Here in China, one of the most popular noodles is Zha Jiang Mian, fried sauce noodles, basically noodles in with a delicious meat sauce. And today, I wanted to try my hand at inventing an American version of the dish, and stay with me on this one. Because the Chinese term jiajiang, it's a dish, but it's not really just one dish. It's more of an idea that's been relentlessly adapted all throughout the country. The fundamental technique is to fry out a bit of minced pork belly, then use that lard to fry some kind of thick fermented sauce, thus giving it the name deep fried sauce. The most famous jiajiang is definitely the original, the Beijing Zha Jiang Mian, which uses a fermented sauce called ganhuangjiang. The second most famous is the Korean Zha Jiang Mian, which uses the Korean chunjang. But you can find this basic idea, again, almost everywhere. Like where we live in Yunnan, it's got its own local version with its own local fermented sauce. A few days back, we covered the Cantonese version, which uses the Cantonese mincy paste. And after that, we taught you how to make the Sichuan version, which fries up pixian doubanjiang. Which for me, it does kind of get my brain churning a bit. Because I'm an American, and if this technique is used everywhere from Hong Kong to Korea to the Yunnan-Myanmar border, what's stopping us from making our own? We like meat, we like noodles, we like deep frying things in lard. Even the most maladjusted expat I've ever met here in China still loved Zha Jiang Mian. For a dish with so many variations throughout China, throughout the world, why not an American one? So that's a challenge that I've set here for myself today, a Zha Jiang Mian with American flavors, which for the pork is definitely the easy bit. I mean, obviously, we're going to be using some American-style bacon. Now, if I went all bacon, I think it would definitely be a little bit too bacony. I mean, this is going to be a meat sauce after all. Think something like a ragu. So this here is a mix of 450 grams of ground pork belly with 100 grams or about 5 strips of bacon. Now, just like the previous jiajiangs, for the pork belly, best is going to be a coarser ground. So you might want to find a proper butcher that's able to do that for you. But if that is impossible or really expensive where you live, just try to find the fattiest one that you can find. So then I'm just gonna slice up this bacon into the same coarse grind sort of consistency, and then this here is gonna be a really nice base for our sauce. Which then brings us to the difficult part of the exercise, which is some kind of thick fermented sauce, which I don't think we really have in America. I mean, we've got some stuff that's fermented. I mean, we do liquor pretty well. We've got some nice fermented hot sauces. There's some vinegars, cheese, and sauerkraut, but nothing that really snugly fits in with this application. Because for me, I kind of put fermented things into a couple of different buckets. There's boozy ferments, there's sour ferments, there's what I think of as lightly fermented protein ferments, heavily fermented protein ferments, and then clear umami ferments, kind of like soy sauce and fish sauce. Now, our cuisines, we've got these ones. We borrowed soy sauce from pretty early on, but we don't traditionally have anything in this middle category here, the jiangs, which I'd imagine is why the chefy types have been so religiously into Japanese miso ever since they first got their hands on it. So maybe we could go miso, but again, I did want American flavors here, so maybe we can take a step back. Historically, we did have something in this category in the form of mushroom ketchup, but it seems like we basically stopped making that around when we collectively fell in love with the tomato. And ever since, it feels like the tomato has functionally filled this void for us. So in our search for the American jiang, this is where my head's at. The American jiang, it should, 1, be a thick sauce. It should, 2, be something recognizably an American flavor. 3, probably have a tomato base in it. And 4, ideally have some kind of fermented component to it. So after thinking about this problem for way too long, the American jiang, it's gotta be barbecue sauce, right? I mean, it's not really a jiang, but it is undeniably us. Now, I'm kind of tempted to just try this bottle straight, but I'm getting an inkling that it might kind of suck. So instead, I'm thinking something a little bit more homemade, barbecue sauce inspired. So I'm thinking of something in the manner of a Kansas City, but I also don't really want to use ketchup. So instead, I'm just playing it safe, going with canned tomatoes, tomato paste, and a little bit of a grab bag of this ingredient list. Which then brings us to the last thing before we cook. Both the Cantonese and the Sichuan versions, they both include some kind of spicy sauce in their mix. And I was also thinking that that also felt like a good idea. So I was thinking maybe Heinz chili sauce, but to me, that's about as spicy as mayonnaise is. So I don't know, I was thinking chipotles and adobo, I was thinking maybe sriracha, but I just decided to keep things simple, and last night I soaked up 15 grams of dried chili in with hot boiled water, and today we'll turn that into a paste. So I'll just snip these into sections, give them a little chop, and you could totally use a food processor for this, but I wanted to use the trick that I taught you a couple of weeks ago, which is to smash 2 cloves of garlic, and here I'll sprinkle on a quarter teaspoon of salt, smash that in, and then start to chop that together with the chilies. Because garlic's an emulsifier, in just 1 or 2 minutes of chopping, that's all going to come together into a really nice paste. So now we've got our tomato, we've got our chili paste, so now let's go outside and we can start with our pork. So the technique here is to start with about a tablespoon of oil, then go in with the pork and bacon, and over a medium-high flame, begin to slowly render out that fat. Now, this is going to take a hot second, so I'm going to quickly run inside, and on a separate burner, I'm going to start to soften up some onions. Try to make everything a little bit more barbecue saucy. So I'll just mix in a quarter teaspoon of salt in with a half a thinly sliced onion, then a tablespoon of peanut oil, and then enough water to just barely cover the bottom. We'll let this go over a low flame for about as long as our pork needs. We're just giving everything a head start to break down. Just try to remember to give this a stir every couple of minutes to make sure that nothing's scorching. So now we'll run back to the pork, and after a minute or so of frying this, it's going to be nice and loosened up a bit like this. Just keep it going. After a couple more minutes, it'll start to reach the I'm being annoying and sticking to the pot stage. Just keep being patient with it, scrape off anything that's sticking, and if you really need, you can also add in a little bit more oil. After a few more minutes of that, it's going to start to render out its lard, and at this point, you're not going to need to nurse things quite as hard. After 10 more minutes of this stage, you're going to be looking for the pork to be nice and golden brown, a bit like this. Just don't take things too brown or too crispy, because remember, we do want this as a base for our meat sauce. But now I just remembered I'm going to swap this to a clay pot because I don't want the acidic tomatoes to be ruining my wok seasoning. So once that's in, we'll move back inside real quick to the onion. So this is what I'm looking at now. It's pretty broken down. I'll just let this go for another minute or two and then toss that into a bowl. So, right. Heating up the lard now, a medium flame, the classic Zha Jiang technique is to add a couple tablespoons of that oil in with your sauce and then mix that really well. The reason for this move is to heat up the sauce a bit gentler, because sometimes if you just dumped everything straight, things can sometimes scorch on you. So then just give that a quick fry, and then we'll also do the same move then with about a tablespoon of tomato paste. Fry that for a hot second, and then once that's fragrant, we'll toss in a tablespoon of paprika and the onions. Then we'll mix that, fry it a bit to make sure that the oil's stained all nice and red, and then go in with 200 grams of crushed tomatoes. Then we'll toss in 200 ml of stock together with 200 ml of a light beer, and then start to bring this up to a light boil. Seasoning with a half teaspoon chicken bouillon powder, 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, a half teaspoon ground coriander seed, and a good crack of black pepper. Then we'll just let that go over medium-high for about 20 minutes to evaporate off all that moisture that we just added and continue to break down the onions. After that time, what we'll be looking for is for the mixture to have kind of reached its lava bubbling stage, something that looks a bit like this. Then we'll drizzle in a slurry of a half tablespoon cornstarch mixed with a bit of water, bit by bit. And once that's stirred in, we'll do our final seasoning. I'll add in a bit more MSG and brown sugar, another generous crack of black pepper this time, and a sour component, which today I'm going to be starting with about a teaspoon of Tabasco. If you want things a little bit more sour, you could maybe add in a little bit more Tabasco, or if you wanted things a little bit more barbecue saucy, maybe a bit of cider vinegar. But at this point, this already tastes pretty good to me, so we can just run inside and see how it is. Now, my conception here was going to be to do a ganban mixed noodle, kind of in the Sichuan style. So we'll give each bowl some base seasoning at first. So let's do an 1/8 teaspoon each salt, MSG, sugar, soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and then a good crack of black pepper. Then we'll just boil up some pasta, take it a touch past al dente, then out, jiggle it to cool down, and let the steam escape. Now let's do the move of a tablespoon of the pasta water, and together with that, the pasta also in. I'll give this a quick mix first, and then we'll smother that with all of our sauce. Now, in Beijing, this famously comes with like a mountain of optional toppings, so I was thinking it might be kind of fun to do the same thing here. Now, I admittedly did kind of go light on the sourness. I think we can have a bit of pickled jalapenos on the side. And if anybody wants theirs a little more spicy, some chopped green chilies, a little less spicy, some sour cream, or for a little freshness, a bit of chopped onion. Then for the sides, when I think of American snacks, I can't think of anything more American than Doritos. So we'll add in a little bit of pile here. And definitely, being American, I think we have to add in a bit of cheddar cheese. Topped with a little scallion, and this is looking pretty good, I think. So yeah. Let's give this to a neutral party, see how I did. Steph, do you want to? Here you go.
All right, let's see. Smells like Mexican food. Pretty good.
I feel like tortilla chips would be better. So yeah, I definitely consider this one a success. Personally, I'm going to be making it again, but I do also think that this can also be adapted. Because like, if we look at the Cantonese Zha Jiang, it's served with wonton noodles in wonton chops. Or if we take a look at the Sichuan Zha Jiang, it's got alkaline noodles and it's often in soup, which is just perfect for the foggy Sichuan winters. So I think we can also take this base and adapt it into the American cultural context. So maybe you could also take this, serve it with cornbread, serve it with fries, or even top it over a hot dog. Why not? So yeah, originally we were all going to have all three of these Zha Jiangs as one video, but after thinking on it, we did really want to do the Cantonese and Sichuan ones justice. We were originally just going to cut this, but I don't know. I just kind of have too much fun with it. So huge thank you to everybody that's supporting us on Patreon. You can find a written recipe for all three of the Zha Jiangs in the link Substack post below. And of course, subscribe for more Chinese and American cooking videos.